Hello there, welcome to my YouTube channel Saint Nightingale. In this tutorial video, I'm going to be showing you how to create hip padding for your dress. Let's go. Alright, so first of what you need is your brown paper or your pattern paper to draft out the pattern for the hip. You need to draft out the waistline. I have already done that in this video. Up next, I'm going to be creating the hip line for the dress. So the hip line for the dress for me is from the waist downwards 9 inches. So I'm marking 9 inches across the brown paper. After marking the 9 inches, I'm going to take my long ruler and I'm going to connect the lines. After connecting the lines, I'm going to go on to mark that place hip line so that when I'm cutting, I can easily identify what the line means. Thereafter, I'm going to proceed to cut the underbutt line, right? Because we're padding the hip and it's also going to increase the way the bum is. So the hip line to the underbutt line is 5 inches. So I'm going to add 5 inches to 9 inches and that will give me 14 inches. So I am marking 14 inches across the brown paper. So like we did for the hip line, I'm going to take the ruler and trace out. Afterwards, I'm going to now mark the upper knee measurement. So the upper knee measurement for this dress is from the hip line downwards 10 inches. So I'm going to proceed to mark 10 inches from the hip line. As you can see, I've placed my tape rule on the hip line and I'm going to mark 10 inches. So as usual, after marking 10 inches, I'll take my ruler and draw across and also label it upper knee so that it's easy for me to identify the line. I'm going to be zooming in so you can see the writing on the brown paper. So we have the waistline, hip line, underbutt line, and the upper knee line. So we're going to go up now and draft out the waist measurement. The waist measurement for me is 28 inches. Remember, this paper has been folded into 4. So I mean, this pattern I'm creating is for it's 1/4. So the first part of the 4 parts that this is divided into, so that's 7 inches. Remember, 7 inches in 4 places will give us 28. So I'm going to mark 7 inches on the waistline. Thereafter, I'm going to proceed to also mark the hip measurement. So I'm going to move this tape run out to the hip line and mark the hip line. The hip measurement is 40 inches. The original measurement for this person is 40 inches. But remember, I'm padding this hip line. I want to make it 42 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1.5 inches to my 10 inches, which will give me 11.5 inches. And that's because I'm going to also be sewing into the foam, and so I've calculated what I'm going to be sewing, which will bring me back to the 42 inches, right? So after marking the hip line measurement, I went on to mark my upper knee measurement. My upper knee measurement is 8.5 inches, so I went on to mark that on that line, and so I'm going to be connecting the dots now. So I went with my curve ruler and I connected from the waistline to the hip line, and I'm going to be doing that as well for the hip line to the upper knee line that I've marked. So that's it. Afterwards, I'm going to create my dart line on the pattern. This is the front part of the dress now, so I'm going to create the dart line. Dart line is the same as the bust points, so the bust to bust point or nipple to nipple points, which is 3.5, and that's 7. 3.5 times 2 is 7, but dividing this into 2 it will give me 3.5. I went downwards to mark 5 inches for the depth of the darts. So I'm going to connect half an inch on both sides of the 3.5 inches that I've marked, which will give me my dart line. So I'm marking half an inch on both sides of the 3.5 inches that I had marked on the waistline, and I'm just going to connect it upwards, and that's the dart line that we have. So because this is the front part, we're going to be working with the dart line. So for us to begin creating that pattern, we'll be taking 3.5 inches on the hip line and I'll be marking that, because for the front part we're going to be working with the dart line. So it's just from that dart line upwards, right? So I've marked 3.5 inches on that line. So just as I had mentioned, we're going to be making use of the dot line. So that point to that point is 3.5 inches, which aligns with the dot line from the waistline downwards. So we're going to proceed to the underbutt line. So from the underbutt line, we're going to take 3 inches from that point inwards. So I'm going to take my tape roll now, and I'm going to put it on 3 inches, and I'm going to mark that part inwards. So after marking that part, I'm going to go to my underbutt line. So from the underbutt line, I'm going to place my measuring tape, and I'm going to mark 2 inches upwards. So I've marked 2 inches now, and I'm going to now take my curve ruler and measure this, or trace the markings. So first I took my ruler to first define that marking first, so that when I'm doing the connection I can easily see where I'm stopping. So I'm going to first use sketch freehand to trace the markings before proceeding to use my curve ruler to better define the markings that I have done. So one more measurement you need is from the waistline downwards. So we're going to mark 3 inches from the waistline downwards. Remember, the hip padding we're doing doesn't start from the waist. So 3 inches downwards from where I had marked that, I'm going to trace it down to the hip line. I'll take my curve ruler now and connect the dots again. So after doing this, I darken this line to my pencil, and this is what you have. So let's proceed to cut the back. So this is the pattern for the back as well. You can see the dot line, you can see the waistline, hip line, underbutt line, and the upper knee line. So we're going to proceed to recreate this at the back, but then there's a bit of a change, right? So I labeled this like I said, waistline, hip line, underbutt line, and upper knee line. So I'm going to take my tape rule now, and from the waistline I'm going to mark 3 inches again like we did in the front. So I've marked 3 inches now. I'll go to the hip line, that's the hip line. From the zip line, that's the 1 inch that you can see there, I'm going to mark out 1 inch from there. And I move to the underbutt line like we did in front. I marked out 3 inches from there, and to the upper knee line I marked out 2 inches upwards. And then I'm going to proceed to use my hand to trace out the markings. So this is what we have. I will take my scissors to cut out, but first let's do a quick recap. So remember, for the back measurement, from the waistline downwards you mark 3 inches. From the zip line inwards you mark 1 inch on the hip line. And also for the underbutt measurements, from the butt line you mark 3 inches, like as you can see. And then from the upper knee measurement you mark 2 inches upwards. So let's go and cut this. So I've cut the front part. I'm now going to cut the back part. Now after cutting the back part, I'm going to place on the foam, 1/2 inch foam that I'll be using to trace out the pattern. I'm going to be cutting this 4 times. I'm going to be replicating the same on this foam as well, and then you'll see what the outcome looks like. So this is what we have. I'm now going to be placing on top of each other for me to be able to sew together, right? So I've placed this together. I'm going to trim the edges carefully so it's flat, and the reason is so that when this is attached to the fabric it doesn't bulge. So I'm going to make the edges as flat as possible on both sides of the foam, and then I'm now going to take my needle and thread and sew together. Remember, the part that I'm sewing together is the edge of the skirt, or the edge of the hip padding, right? The part that curves is part I'm sewing together for the front and for the back. So let me just show you quickly what this looks like. I'm going to fold back now and tighten my stitching. So I'm going to sew again downwards. I've sewn upwards, I'm going to sew again downwards so that I double the stitching and it's strong enough. The reason I'm not using the sewing machine is because the machine can't sew on this, and so I'm going to be using hand stitch to make this firm. So I'm done stitching now, and this is what it looks like. Let me flip it over so you see what it looks like. I'm going to be replicating the same for the second one as well. Remember to always ensure that you trim. So I can see some excess on the sides. I'm going to be taking my scissors to trim out the excess, and make the edge as flat as possible. It's important that the edge is as flat as possible for me to be able to achieve what I'm going to be doing or what I want to do. So I'm going to be flattening the edges. Here you have your hip and butt pad. I'm now going to be sewing this on the fabric so that we can proceed. So let's go to the machine now. So on the fabric, I'm going to be marking 3.5 inches, half an inch sewing allowance. Remember we had marked 3 inches from the brown paper, so 3.5 inches to cover up the sewing allowance upwards. I'm going to use my pin to secure, and then I'm going to sew on the fabric. So after sewing on the fabric, I'm going to replicate the same for the other part of the fabric. The fabric I'm sewing on is the lining, right? So I've now placed it on the other part of the fabric of the skirt, and I'm going to now adjust on the mannequin. I just want to see what this looks like, so that if I need to trim it out more, trim the edges more, I can flip over inwards and then trim it. This sewing method that I use for this is the inside sewing inside closing method, so that it can conceal the hip padding that I've created. So I'm just going to be snatching this now or making it tighter on the mannequin so that I see what the outcome is. So let's see the back, and this is what the back looks like. See, it's sleeping well. It looks very natural. I'm going to now take this to the machine and connect the upper body. So this is what the skirt looks like on the upper body of this dress. I am now going to be fixing the remaining part, and you're going to be seeing what this looks like on the client. I already love what this looks like, even without piecing the remaining part of the dress together. This looks so voluptuous. Padding the hip from 40 inches to 42 inches looks very, very natural. So let's add the remaining part of the dress. And voila, right here you have it. This is what the entire look of the dress looks like. I love the outcome of this hip padding. It looks so sweet and natural. It also complements the entire look that we have created. Now let's see what this looks like on the client. Some of you might have seen it on the shot, but I'm bringing it back here for you to see. And this is what it turned out to look like on my client. She looks so amazing and sweet at the wedding that she attended. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Keep creating magic. It's Saint Nightingale. Bye bye.